Well, hello everybody, how are you doing this fine day? I hope you're enjoying your week. Welcome to another survival challenge. And today we are going over Bioshock, a pseudo kind of horror game. You know, I've never really considered this game to be much a horror. I don't find it scary, and I don't really get a horror vibe through like 99% of the game. The only part of the game that I find even slightly horror is that there's this one scene where there's this office, and you go into the office, and there's a thing on the counter, and I forgot what it was, but it's like appealing. So you go, and you pick the thing up off the counter, and the game is programmed that when you turn around, there's a fucking dude right there standing behind you that attacks you instantly. And it's the only jump scare in the entire game that, for me, is just an action game. But you know what? I'm taking that single scene and saying that it counts and qualifies this series as being horror for the purposes of this sort of horror-themed Halloween-ish type challenge. And as for the survivors, I'm just throwing the fucking theme out altogether. Just picking 4 completely random fucking people and throwing them in here and not caring about any sort of through line. Because not everything has to be so goddamn complicated. Sometimes you can just do shit because it's cool. So don't go whine about it. You're sitting down on a toilet pushing out a massive fucking mud monster on a goddamn magical portal box, listening to some guy rant somewhere else randomly on the planet who makes videos specifically for your enjoyment that you don't gotta fucking pay for. How awesome is the world we live in? This is some nutty shit. And if you enjoy it, remember to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. But I've wasted enough of your time. Let's get started. All right, so what are we doing? Right. Okay. So we gotta take a bunch of characters and we're gonna chuck them on into the Bioshock universe, specifically Rapture and Rapture during the events of the first game. The main character, Jack, has a plane crash at the beginning of the game, and then he lands in the middle of the ocean or whatever, and then he goes and he finds Rapture. In this particular scenario, Jack fucking dies in that plane crash. He's not gonna make it. And in his place, this other character, whoever it is I'm going to be talking about, is going to be there instead, and we're going to see how events might differ. So, as usual, I should tell you some stuff about Rapture. And oh man, this is annoying. Okay, what do I need to tell you about Rapture? Fuck. Do I have to go over, like, the philosophical and political meaning of why Rapture exists? Is that something I have to do? Because I'll be honest, I don't want to do that. So, a long time ago, there was a man by the name of Andrew Ryan. He was a very rich industrialist, and he had a very unusual mindset when it came to politics and how a country should govern itself, which was essentially that it shouldn't, like, at all. So, in complete rejection of society and the laws of man and how people run shit, he decided to go and build a massive city underwater called Rapture, where basically it's like to him, I suppose, a perfect utopia, which is supposed to be a scathing critique of objectivism. It's a political ideology that was created by Ayn Rand. In its simplest terms, is individualism to its extreme. It believes that selfishness is actually a virtue and altruism is a vice. It follows the belief that if every single person in existence just fought for themselves to improve their own position and their own way of life, that would lift up all of society. And if you flipped it and everybody was just constantly self-sacrificing for the people around them, it would actually hold society back and it just wouldn't be good. The whole purpose of the story of Bioshock is to critique this belief. Anyway, point is, Andrew Ryan is not really the best leader, and he runs this fucking city into the goddamn ground. Because of everyone's freedom to basically do whatever they want, and the only thing really mattering is success, it creates this very elitist society where you have certain people up top who have everything, and then a ton of people just living in absolute poverty, which made people want to overthrow the government, which then made Andrew Ryan super paranoid about people trying to step on his dream, and it caused the entire city to fucking collapse. At the beginning of Bioshock, you were arriving to this city after it has already collapsed. And that led to one of the greatest first-person shooter games of all time. So what can our survivors expect to find when they arrive in Rapture? Well, a lot of things. One, there's like no fucking morality that exists within this entire world. Rapture was founded very shortly after World War II, and Andrew Ryan is an extremely amoral person. He was perfectly okay with having Nazis come to Rapture to experiment for the further pushing of humanity. Now, while Andrew Ryan wasn't for all of the Nazi shit, like, He didn't care for the pushing of the racial supremacy. He didn't care for the socialist economic structure. What he did respect is that there were a lot of Nazi scientists who worked for Hitler for the sole purpose that they didn't really have any limits on what they can do in terms of experimentation. They weren't limited by morality. And Andrew respected this enough that he had a lot of those people come down to Rapture and basically start doing all their crazy experimentation shit. Because of this, they actually made a lot of like really cool shit. Like for instance, they made this substance called Atom that people inject in themselves and give them fucking superpowers. And these superpowers vary from all sorts of things. You can just light people on fire by snapping your fingers. You can summon bees out of your forearm and shoot them at people. You can telekinetically lift and throw things. Basically, characters have a bunch of different powers in this world. This scientific advancement also applies to the guns of the game. Like, the guns are World War II style guns. However, due to the scientific advancements, they're like slightly altered versions to where they're more powerful, they shoot faster, etc., etc. Another thing they invented is the Big Daddy, which is essentially a human person who undergoes all sorts of cybernetic and chemical enhancements that make them this sort of, I'm not going to say mindless, but very one-track mind beings that solely exist to protect the little sisters, who are the distribution factories for Adam, basically. And after the city completely fucking collapsed and all of the people who were in that city basically lost their minds and went insane, like they started forming cults and doing all kinds of crazy shit, basically the entire economic structure of the city is about acquiring this Adam, and to do that you have to get the little sisters and you have to fight the Big Daddies. So basically Rapture is Mad Max underwater with more scientific advancement and big-ass mutant Big Daddies. And instead of everybody wanting water, they want Adam, and they have to fight all these Big Daddies in order to acquire it. But like, basically no one in Rapture is capable of taking out a Big Daddy other than Jack. But Jack's not here. And that's essentially what our survivors are getting thrown into. So the question becomes, can our survivors survive an underwater world where they really can't escape or go anywhere, that is filled with crazy people that have superpowers and advanced weaponry, at least for the time period, who want to kill them on sight to take resources from them, as well as massive Big Daddies who will attack them if our survivors ever try to acquire those superpowers for themselves so that they could survive against all the psycho bullshit and people trying to kill them. Yeah, basically, that's the whole thing. So let's get to the survivors. First up on the chopping block, we have Vaas Montenegro from Far Cry 3. Originally, I was going to do Jason Brody from Far Cry 3, but then I realized basically any situation you put Vaas in is going to instantly become more interesting than Jason Brody. So maybe next time. So who exactly is Vaas? He's a psychopathic right hand to a dictator over an island who used to be a member of a revolutionary tribal warriors, but then was like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna go do awesome shit because he wanted to fuck his sister and his sister didn't let him. And now he's just a tyrant who does whatever he wants, whenever he wants to do it, to whoever he wants to do it to. And he's basically helped this dictator build a massive drug empire on the island. He has stated on more than one occasion that before Jason Brody got to the island, he was the absolute best warrior there. There's a really good reason why this massive tribe of basically like mini Rambos couldn't overcome Vaas. He's unbelievably skilled, incredibly intelligent, and again, super fucking psychopathic. So how will he do once he arrives in Rapture? I think he's gonna have a ball of a time, to be honest with you. For one, he's gonna fit right in. His mental stability levels should be comparable to a lot of the people in Rapture to begin with, and his ability shown in the game to repel against the effects of a lot of drugs shows that he may have a resistance to Adam's more addictive effects, or it could possibly be worse. This was kind of hard to say because a lot of people get just straight up addicted to Adam. They've gone so far, they've even created cults around worshiping it. Vaas in Far Cry 3 was a massive drug addict, but he would often drug other people and use those drugs to control other people while also using them himself. But at no point is he ever shown to be controlled by his own drugs. And it's also shown that when he is drugged, the effects don't affect him as much as it affects other people because of how often he's always on them. So a part of me is leaning towards the idea that he may not get addicted to Adam in the same way that a lot of other people are. And because many of these people are already insane, and a lot of that insanity has to do with their addiction to Adam, much like he did in his own game, he may be able to use that to his advantage to possibly build his own sort of cult-like group. And once he does that, which I think he'll be able to do pretty easily, because he was able to do something similar in his own island and those people weren't fucking insane, he can then use that group to go after the big daddies and start taking the atom, and even kind of sort of create a stockpile that he can use to control more people. Because one thing I think that you can't argue is that Vaas is not going to defeat a big daddy one-on-one, which means he's not going to be able to get his hands on a whole lot of Adam when he first gets there. Despite him being the best warrior in Far Cry 3 other than Jason, even Jason, the way we see him fight, he only ever fights like regular people, and he usually uses stealth and sort of like guerrilla Rambo type tactics. He never just goes in guns blazing and mows down 100 people without any risk of him being shot up and killed himself. And he never fights anything that's superhuman like a big daddy. And the fact that Jason Brody is stated to be better than Vaas means it should be pretty clear Vaas should not have the skills necessary to overcome a big daddy by himself. But I don't think he's going to try to do that. I think he's going to use the drug that is Adam in order to control people, to get them to go after the big daddies for him, and then use that as a means to grab power. Any normal psycho that he comes into contact with that lives in Rapture, he's going to be able to take care of them himself because he's better trained than they are. The only things that are really going to be an issue for him are, again, big daddies who only attack you if you go after the little sisters. That's important because that means every time Vaas fights a big daddy, it'll be on his terms. He can start that fight. They'll never attack him when he's not expecting it. And two would be Frank Fontaine, who would easily destroy Vaas. And since I didn't talk about Frank in the last section, I'll talk about him a little bit here. Frank Fontaine is basically the second most powerful person in all of Rapture behind Andrew Ryan, and he has this whole plan to basically take over Rapture and overcome Andrew Ryan by using his son, who he enslaved with this sort of hypnotism type experimentation they did on him when he was a child. It's a whole thing. And Frank Fontaine experimented on himself and pumped himself up with so much Adam that he's basically not even fucking human anymore. He's just this massive super powered being, and he's easily the physically most powerful thing in all of Rapture over all of the big daddies and everything else, and Vaas just won't be able to fight against that. But if he does build up enough of a following and start to build these psychos to join him, he may be able to overwhelm Frank with just sheer numbers, because Frank doesn't really have that many people on his side anymore. He's trying for a power grab, but he doesn't actually have that much power. Rapture's in absolute fucking chaos right now. Frank Fontaine was successful in Rapture as long as it sort of held together as a society, because he was able to use his money and means in order to get people to do things that he wanted. But now that that money and means is worthless because Rapture has fallen apart into just fucking travesty, his way of controlling people doesn't work anymore. But Vaas's way of controlling people will absolutely work, and he's better at it than Frank Fontaine. So what exactly will happen with Vaas in Rapture? I think he's going to become a cult leader. I think he's going to become a cult leader, and I think he's going to work towards taking over all of Rapture, which for the most part, I think he can do. I don't think there's anything that can really stop him as long as he's controlling other people to do things for him. If he ever puts himself in danger, that's going to be an issue. Because there's a lot of shit that he just can't fight against. I don't think he can beat a big daddy. He definitely can't beat the more advanced alpha big daddies. And he sure as shit isn't going to beat Frank Fontaine. But much like in his own game where he used other people to do things for him, he'll probably do the same thing here. And as long as he sticks to that method of doing things, I think he'll be really, really successful. Now, is it possible that Frank Fontaine will just slaughter through all of his men, get to him, and kill him? Yeah, that's possible. But Vaas is actually pretty good at strategy. He's not the best, he's not a genius, but he's decent at it. I think he could find a way to overcome Frank, possibly. But honestly, he might just do it just by throwing enough people at him. Like if Vaas is building a stockpile of Adam by using psychos to do this shit for him, and then he pumps these psychos full of Adam to give them massive superpowers, then just sends them and chucks them towards Frank Fontaine. I mean, it's only a matter of time before they fucking kill Frank Fontaine, right? Like, he can't fight all of them. It's an entire city of psychopaths. The story I think you're gonna end up getting here is essentially a Game of Thrones type sort of battle over the soul of Rapture. One side led by Frank Fontaine, one side led by Vaas. I think Frank Fontaine has more physical power. Vaas is just better in this sort of scenario than Frank is, because this is literally what he does in his own game, so I think Vaas will overcome. So at the end of the game, I think Vaas more or less takes over Rapture, and he's basically gonna be like the equivalent to a Immortan Joe from Mad Max Fury Road sort of thing, but in the city of Rapture, which is pretty fucking cool. Next up on the list, we have Jackie Estacado from The Darkness, the video game series, not the comic book series, even though I kind of want to talk about the comic book series. But I can't talk about the comic series because he's way too powerful and he would just completely slaughter through all of Bioshock. And honestly, most universes, he's basically God. So no, for this particular challenge, I have to use the video game version, which puts me in kind of a hole because the video game version, I don't really understand. I've played both Darkness 1 and Darkness 2, the video games, and I get it. Like, I've played the games, I know the story, I actually really like them. But I've always kind of believed that Jackie's character and a lot of the ways that the thing is written doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Jackie in the games is painted as a good person. He's polite and he's kind and he's considerate and everyone likes him and he's very respectful, and he just doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would be a mafia hitman, and I just don't think the character really works. They try to do this whole assassin with a heart of gold thing, but when you say assassin, it disqualifies the possibility that they have a heart of gold. And knowing the things that you know about Jackie going through these games, you realize very quickly that there's no way in hell that he would ever work for someone like Uncle Paulie. So if you've never played the first Darkness game, basically what ends up happening is you play as Jackie Estacado and you're a hitman for a crime family in New York, and your Uncle Paulie is the boss of the crime family. At the very beginning of the game, your uncle betrays you and tries to blow you up. What he doesn't know, because you were adopted, is that your family line is tied to this ancient godlike entity known as the Darkness, and on your 21st birthday, which is the day that Uncle Paulie tried to kill you, which is super inconvenient, Jackie unlocked the powers of the Darkness. He then spends the whole game trying to get revenge on his Uncle Paulie for trying to kill him, and that's basically the plot of the story. A lot of twists and turns, and other cool shit happens, but for the most part, it's a revenge story that evolves into more stuff. In the games, Uncle Paulie is shown to be a fucking monster. He's a really bad dude, and I don't understand how someone as kind and sweet and good-natured as the way Jackie is presented in the game could ever work for Uncle Paulie. And there's a lot of changes they made from the comic to the game that I don't really think make sense. And let me be clear, I played the games before I read the comics. So this is not an instance of me reading the comics first and then playing the games and being like, oh, I don't like all these changes. The things that didn't make sense in the game didn't make sense when I played them before I read the comics, and then reading the comics, I started to realize why it was it didn't make sense. Another thing that just straight up didn't make sense to me is that in the games, your girlfriend's name is Jenny. You two grew up in an orphanage together and you've been together since childhood. She's your girlfriend and she has absolutely no idea that you're a mafia hitman, despite the fact that at the very beginning of the game, you get into a car chase shootout in a convertible against like 30 cops and you murder a shit ton of people, like a bunch of cops. You murder them during the car chase in the middle of New York City. You murder them at this construction site and shoot through several dozen of them. And somehow your girlfriend has no idea what you do for a living? How is that possible? How is this not national news? The comics make way more sense. For one, Jackie's not a good person in the comics. He's a piece of shit. The Uncle Paulie equivalent character is actually worse in the comics than he is in the games. But Jackie is such an irredeemable scumbag, it's super easy to see how he would work for someone like that. For instance, in the very first issue of The Darkness, Jackie is on an assignment to kill a guy, and he rams his car into him, killing him, like smashing him up against the wall, and then just sits in his car and watches this dude bleed out. He later goes back to his boss, who then tells him, oops, you killed the wrong person. Jackie finds this funny and starts laughing at it. At one point, he's supposed to kill this woman's brother, and when he goes to the house, he finds his sister there. She knows he's there to kill him, and she asks him, please don't. Jackie says the only way he won't kill him is if this woman, who's very good looking, sleeps with him. So she does. She sleeps with him for the life of her brother, and then Jackie goes and kills the brother anyway. At one point, Jackie starts to see a couple of things that don't quite line up with his business, and he starts to question whether or not there's a traitor in the family. So he goes to a friend of his and accuses him of being a traitor. This guy says, no, I'm not a traitor. He then kills this man with a grenade, and then as the man's dying, he said, I swear I wasn't the traitor. And Jackie says, oh well, you could have been. Jackie in the comics is completely irredeemable. Like, there's just no getting around how much of a piece of shit this character is. The Darkness comics are not about a hitman with a heart of gold. It's about a really, really, really bad dude who is trying to force himself to be a good person, and he keeps failing at it over and over and over again. Because in the comic books, Jenny is in love with him, but he doesn't really reciprocate those feelings. And then eventually he does reciprocate those feelings, but at that point it's too late. She leaves, and then later on she gets killed. And then to sort of keep her memory alive, he decides to change his life and make himself a better person and try and use his darkness powers for the good of society and be a hero. But again, he never quite gets to that hero level. He's always a bad, shitty dude. At one point in the comics later on, when he becomes really powerful, he doesn't like the way his life is going. So he erases the entire universe and then recreates it to make his life better. And one of the things he ends up doing is, at the time, he had a child with another woman. He erases them all, recreates that child, but gives that child to the dead girl that he was in love with, Jenny. He brings her back to life, and in this new reality, he makes the daughter he didn't have with her their child. This is fucked up enough by itself because you like robbed a woman of her child and gave it to another woman. But the woman who he robbed was a wielder of the Witchblade, which is the most powerful weapon in the world. And when he erased the universe, the Witchblade protected her and did not allow her to get erased. So when he erased the universe and then recreated it, the woman who used to be the mother of that child still remembers and is still the same version as before he altered the universe. So she remembers that's her kid. But her kid doesn't remember that she was her mom. He stripped a woman of her child and then erased that child's memories so it thought some other woman was his mom, simply because he didn't like where his life was and he wanted to alter it to make it better for himself. Very selfish, very piece of shit character, but I still like the comic and I like him. It's a comic about a villain. That's the whole thing. So to get to the point to all this, if we go back to the video game version, I don't really entirely understand how he would behave if you threw him in any situation, because I don't really get the character. Like, I don't understand how someone who acts so good on the surface can do the things that the game is trying to convince me he does. Like, for instance, the game sort of is helped out by the fact that you never actually see his character go on a hit. You never see Jackie Estacado go out to kill an innocent person. And that's for the best when it comes to the story, because the way this character is written, he doesn't seem like that's something he would do. Yes, he does kill a bunch of cops at the beginning of the story when they're chasing him, but even in that position, they're the aggressors to him and he's defending himself. It's still not a great act and he's still murdering a bunch of people, sure, but I just don't see this character going out to murder an innocent person for this psychopathic boss that he has, Uncle Paulie, who's putting him on hits to murder just anyone who he wants him to murder. This character just doesn't seem like the type of character that would do that. He seems like he's rather heroic for the most part. So in my mind, I kind of chose one of the hardest characters I could have to try and see what they would do when he goes to Rapture. Because honestly, I'm not sure what he would do if he went to Rapture. In the second game, Darkness 2, after he defeats Paulie and all that shit, he takes over the mafia and he's actually like running this criminal empire. But just like the first game, it doesn't really show him do anything that's super evil or fucked up, despite the fact that he runs a goddamn crime organization. Because what that story is about is a cult comes up who basically wants to strip him of the darkness and use that darkness for their own means. So again, he's not the aggressor. He's defending himself from a bunch of evil people who are trying to strip him of power for their own evil purposes. He never kills an innocent person in that game, despite the fact that he's a fucking crime lord. So if he gets thrown in Rapture, the only thing I can really see him doing is fighting to defend himself. What's he gonna do? Build a crime organization in Rapture with a bunch of psychopaths? I don't see that shit happening. The only story I could possibly see happening is that with this massively powerful force entering Rapture, it's going to become very interesting for other parties to basically want to use them for his own advantage. I mean, I can imagine someone like Frank Fontaine realizing that the darkness is here and being like, we think Adam's crazy powerful? What the fuck is this shit? I just don't see any way that he'll see that power and not try to use it to his advantage to taking over Rapture. When something that uniquely powerful shows up in your vicinity and you're a guy who wants to take power and that's your whole purpose, you're not gonna like not take advantage, right? Like, clearly. So I kind of see the story being very similar to the way that Darkness 1 or 2 was, where someone is the aggressor towards him, possibly trying to take his power away from him or use him for their own benefit, and then him having to fight back. In which case, do I think Jackie Estacado can fight his way through all of Rapture? Yes. I absolutely do. For one, with him being a Rapture, no one's going to understand what his weakness is. We know that it's the darkness and that his weakness is light in the games. That's not really his weakness in the comics anymore. But they don't know that. And the thing is, the people who made Bioshock do, to some extent, believe that they made a horror game. So there isn't a whole lot of light in Rapture. It's very dark. It's undersea. Most of the lights don't work. Jackie's gonna be really fucking powerful down there, and there aren't gonna be that many opportunities or means for people to use light as a weapon against him. It's not like there's an atom power that creates light that they can then use as a weapon against the darkness. They don't really have a way of fighting him appropriately. Now, it's possible they may at some point find out that light is his weakness if he's down there long enough, and then develop something that they can use as a weapon against him. But until then, they're not really capable of fighting against them. It's very difficult to die in this game if you're in complete darkness. The darkness itself gives you armor and constantly increases your health every moment that you're standing in it. You're essentially unkillable. Light is really the only way that they can overcome you. And even if they do end up developing some sort of thing and then killing Jackie, he dies in the first game. What ends up happening is that his soul goes to this sort of darkness universe, while in the real world, the darkness rebuilds his body, and then once his body's rebuilt, it just sends his soul right back into his body. So he's also immortal and can just keep coming back from the dead over and over again. So if Jackie showed up in Rapture, Frank Fontaine and the Psychos would have to figure out what his weakness is, then be able to strategize well enough to use that weakness against him to take him out, and then somehow figure out how to either keep him dead or extract the darkness power from his body before he wakes up. I find all of those things very unlikely, especially considering just how good Jackie is at fighting even when he doesn't have the darkness power. I don't think Jackie's gonna have any interest in actually using Adam to increase his power, but even if he was, he doesn't really need to. Rapture's best option in this particular scenario is just to leave Jackie the fuck alone. But obviously, it's not going to do that. So it's fucked. Next up, we have a Baron of Hell from Doom. Yeah, threw you off there, didn't I? You saw that thumbnail and you thought I was just gonna throw all of Doom in there or a bunch of demons. Nope. Just one fucking dude. Now, for people who are a little more well-versed in the Doom lore, this might throw some people off because it's really not possible to put only one demon into any universe, because the way the rules of the universe work, if a demon gets introduced into a universe, that then gives access to that universe to all other demons. Ergo, if you put a Baron of Hell into Rapture, all of a sudden portals will start opening up all over Rapture and demons will just flood in. So we're kind of going to ignore the rules. Basically, Davith and the rest of the demon horde are not going to have access to Rapture. It's just going to be a single Baron of Hell chucked in there to see how it goes. So, what can I actually say about a Baron of Hell? Do they even have much of a personality? Kinda. There's a couple of things we know about the Baron of Hell that will help us here. One, we know that they're actually intelligent. They're not stupid. They're actually very good fighters, and they can even strategize. Barons of Hells are called that because they are barons. They are physically powerful enough and have enough intelligence that they can dominate large swaths of other demons and subjugate those demons under their rule. There actually is a hierarchy of demons where certain demons will be above others and can order them to do shit. Baron of Hell are pretty high up on that hierarchy. It's also very common in their culture to go down and fight in these massive fight pits to determine who the strongest demons are, to see who will rule what and who will be next in line to take over after one Baron falls and all that kind of stuff. The culture of the Barons of Hell, if you can even call it that, are very much so based on power, war, and subjugation. And the Barons are so physically powerful that it was stated that among all of the incursions that the UAC did into Hell, they were never once capable of taking down or capturing a Baron of Hell, despite the fact they have all the same advanced weaponry that the military has. So to summarize, we're going to take a 12-foot tall demon monstrosity who rules over others through forced subjugation, really loves warring, and most weapons aren't actually going to work against them. Just to clarify for people who were like, well, Doom Guy's guns work against them. Yes, this has already been stated multiple times. Hugo Martin already said, Doom Guy's guns are empowered through his will. When he picks up a gun, it does more damage than that gun would normally do if somebody else used it. His godlike power amplifies the guns that he uses. A normal gun, not used by Doom Guy, even if it's Doom Guy's gun, will not do the same amount of damage against a Baron of Hell, which perfectly explains why the UAC, despite having all those weapons, weren't actually capable of hurting a Baron of Hell. So, why did I take a Baron of Hell and put him in this situation? Really only one reason. The concept of a Baron of Hell fighting a Big Daddy is too fucking cool to not talk about. That's literally my only reason. I was actually going to put BJ Blazkowicz in here, but I very quickly realized that BJ would basically go down the exact same storyline that Jack did, minus the whole would you kindly mind control thing. And BJ Blazkowicz exists in the same universe that Doom does, so the Baron I just thought would be a cooler option, really. I mean, come on. Can you imagine how awesome it would be if a fucking Big Daddy just dashes forward at insane speeds to try and kill a Baron of Hell, and then the Baron of Hell raises his hand up and grabs the fucking drill. The Big Daddy's drill starts spinning in this dude's hand, ripping his fucking hand up, but then the Argent energy blood that comes out of the Baron's hand starts melting the drill. The Baron grabs the front of the fucking Big Daddy's face mask and chucks him across the room. Then the fucking Big Daddy gets back up, leaps at him, tackles him through several walls. All these little psychos looking, watching these two, almost like a mini kaiju fight in fucking Rapture. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be so cool. It's a giant fucking monster fight. Imagine a whole movie through the eyes of like one of the random citizens of Rapture who has to deal with all the Big Daddy bullshit. But then all of a sudden he hears this story of this giant horned monstrosity that just shows up in Rapture that can't be killed. The weapons don't work against it. They've tried drowning it and the motherfucker won't drown because demons don't actually need oxygen. They can fight in space. And there's just this massive monster going through these underground tunnels in this very claustrophobic area, just fucking slaughtering people. And then all of a sudden this guy sees the demon for the first time. Oh shit, it's real. Fuck, I'm about to die. There's a little sister. I'm gonna go fuck with the little sister because the only way that I could possibly save my life is to get a Big Daddy to try and kill me, and then maybe I can have them two fight each other and I don't have to deal with this situation no more. And boom, Big Daddy versus Baron of Hell, badass fight. It would be so cool. Now, having said that, the Baron of Hell is gonna win that fight. The story that you would essentially see Rapture go through is all of these psychopaths basically slowly getting corrupted by the passive corruption that the Baron of Hell does to all of Rapture. They would all start seeing visions and freaking out and slowly start like turning into little monsters themselves. Even the Big Daddies would start being affected by this corruption, which also really awesome, Big Daddy Doom Demon. I'm telling you, this crossover is filled with fucking cool ideas. And the Baron is just slaughtering his way through Rapture, killing everyone, including Big Daddies. And then you basically have Frank freaking the fuck out, basically being like, okay, how do we stop this thing? And him bringing all his resources and power together to try and prepare himself for this demon that's slaughtering its way through all of Rapture. And then at the end of the story, you got a paranoid, super amped Adam version of Frank Fontaine, similar to what he was in Bioshock, but just more so because he would have to prepare a lot more than he had to prepare for Jack, versus this Baron, and he's got to not only fight against the Baron, but also fight against this constant corruption that's infecting his mind. Do I think he's gonna win? No, probably not. But sometimes these survival challenges aren't made because I think somebody might win or not. Sometimes they're just made because they're fucking cool. By the end of the story, what I end up seeing happening is a bunch of corrupted humans who have now become demons, a Baron who doesn't have any connection to Davith or the other demons would basically become the strongest one and essentially lead this whole group, and then leave Rapture and rise up to attack the rest of the world. You might even have a cool situation where if Davith were to eventually like find this universe and be like, what the fuck's going on here? The Baron of Hell by that point might be strong enough and powerful enough to just be like, you know what? I don't really feel like serving you anymore. I've been running shit myself over here in Rapture without having to deal with any of y'all's shit. Y'all wanna come at me, bitch? Let's go. And then he'll die. But again, it would still be cool. Last up, but certainly not least, we have Tidus from the Space Marine series, Warhammer 40k and shit. And there is a whole lot to go over the story of Tidus. I'm not gonna go over all of it. Basically, all you gotta know is that Tidus was a super fucking loyal and good soldier who was then accused of corruption, which is a crime in the Warhammer 40k universe. He didn't actually do it, but they thought he did it. And for his atonement, he had to basically serve in the Death Watch for like 100 years, which is this special subset of space. Look, anything I try to tell you about 40K, for you to fully understand it, I have to then go into literally thousands and thousands of pages of lore, okay? I'm not explaining to you what the fucking Death Watch is or what corruption is. It's a lot. I don't know how long this video is gonna end up being, but I can guarantee you it ain't gonna be that fucking long. Point is, he's a 9-foot tall, incredibly well-trained soldier with a giant chain sword and a big-ass gun, super fucking heavily armored, and stupidly fucking loyal to the Emperor of Mankind and the Imperium of Man as a whole, to the point that it's fucking psychotic. And if you're saying to me, Rouga, did you just put him in here because it would also be cool to see how he would do against a Big Daddy? Obviously, yes. What are you, fucking stupid? Of course that's the reason I put him in here. I want to see Tidus fight a Big Daddy. You know what we really should do? We should really put Tidus, a Big Daddy, and a Baron of Hell all in Rapture together and just see what happens. Just watch the chaos unfold. I want 3 massively fucking hulking badasses trapped in this little claustrophobic underwater bullshit land, just fucking tearing each other apart. It would be awesome. And just like the Baron of Hell, we are not giving Tidus access to the Emperor of Man. I understand there's like this whole thing where the Emperor of Man supported Tidus and like he was able to overcome what he overcame with the help of the Emperor of Man. I get that. He's not getting the Emperor of Mankind. It's just Tidus as he is with his weapons, his armor. So how would he do in Rapture? Really well, because kind of a lot like the Baron of Hell, I don't actually think a Big Daddy can beat Tidus. Don't get me wrong, it'd be really cool to watch these two fight, but we see Tidus lift things and move things that we just don't see the Big Daddies capable of doing. In Space Marine 2, we see Tidus fight all sorts of Tyranids. Fighting a Big Daddy wouldn't be like killing the smallest. It would be like killing like one of the medium size. Like the ones that are about as tall as Tidus is, you know, like the slightly more challenging ones, but not the giant ones that are like boss fights. That would kind of be like what fighting a Big Daddy would be like to Tidus. It would be something, you know. Wouldn't be easy, but it also wouldn't really be that much of a thing, you know? Like, his guns are so much more powerful than Jack's guns in Bioshock. He'll be able to wipe through the Big Daddies pretty much immediately. I don't think their armor will be able to repel that many shots from a gun like that. I don't personally think there's a whole lot that Atlas could do either, to be honest with you. Nobody in all of Bioshock is trained to the level that Tidus is trained. They don't have armor to the level that Tidus has armor. They don't have guns at the level that Tidus has guns. Like, it's just, it's a totally different level of power, but I still think it would be cool. So I don't really care. Like, can you imagine Tidus using the chain sword and swinging it at a Big Daddy, and Big Daddy blocking it with the big ass fucking drill, and then they're both like spinning, and then the sparks are flying, and they're just sort of pushing and shoving and trying to kill it. Like, it's cool. It's a cool concept, and it's a cool visual. Like, I want that on a t-shirt. I want a Big Daddy clashing with Tidus on the front of a t-shirt with like a Baron of Hell in the background that's like leaping at the both of them. I want an action set piece involving those 3 characters. Now, one problem I do see here, and something I think may actually make Tidus lose, is the fact that they're underwater. With Tidus running around in an already pretty claustrophobic area, on top of him being like twice the size of a normal human being, using those much more powerful weapons than normally exist in Bioshock, he's gonna have to be very careful to not, you know, miss a shot with his gun that's gonna blow a fucking hole in a wall, or swinging that chainsword a little too recklessly and hitting something and basically flooding the entire area he's in. Because unlike the demons, he can't fucking breathe underwater. I can actually see a world where Frank Fontaine sees this guy coming and knows by just the sheer evidence of him slaughtering through all of his people that he can't actually overcome him. So he's just like, fuck it, seal off the hallway, flood it, and just kill him that way. And that would probably work. Frank didn't do that to Jack in Bioshock because he wanted him there and he was using him to grab power. But if he can't use Tidus to grab power, or even worse, he sees Tidus as way too much of a threat to him and will stop him from grabbing power, then he'll probably just do that. Yeah, he'll probably just seal it off and flood the whole area and kill him that way. That is, of course, unless we do use the Baron of Hell's presence in here as well, and then Tidus can turn into a demon, And if Tidus turns into a demon, then he can breathe underwater. Then you have a massive armored horned demon with a big ass gun that can't drown. I feel like this whole video has been me just introducing characters that would dominate Bioshock. These were poor picks. These were not good picks. I picked most of these because visually it would be cool to see them fight a Big Daddy. Not necessarily because it makes this the best survival. This is a bad survival challenge video. This is a bad video. But that's going to be all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, and join the membership. Remember, if you join the membership, you get videos early. Also, we have a stream every Saturday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Come on by. You can join the voice chat. You can text chat people. You can talk and do all kinds of stuff. We're building a tier list. It's Halloween. The tier list we're building next is a horror movie monster tier list. We're going to build it as a community. It's going to be awesome. So come and do that shit. And if you have any arguments of anything that you disagreed with that I've said in any video in the past week or so, you can come and give me those arguments and we can debate about it. And always remember, y'all stay safe out there, you hear?